Welcome to the No Budget Filmcast, where we dip into the independent film universe to highlight those little films that you might not have heard about elsewhere. We'll agree with our panel, or will the panel agree with each other? Tune in to find out. My name is Milo Dennison, and with me, as always, are my most excellent co-hosts, Claire Milan.
Hello.
And Cathal Feeney.
Hello.
I actually forgot. I thought of this earlier. I was going to pull up like some fake applause and have some fake applause play during when I introduced you guys, but maybe I'll do it next time. All right. Today we are, Cathal, I'll just let you introduce the film. How about that? I won't even bother like saying the name of it.
Okay. So this film is called Wasp. So it's a film by the UK film director Andrea Arnold. And it was probably the film that sort of launched her career. It was made, I think, around 2003, 2004. And it won an Oscar for Best Live Action Short. And it won a Sundance Film Festival Award as well the following year. So it's very resonant of her kind of style of filmmaking, kind of gritty urban realism. It's set in a sort of a council estate, and it follows the kind of day in the life of this young mother who's really struggling to cope with a young family, and this man from her not too distant past comes back into her life, and she's trying to juggle looking after her kids with meeting up with this guy, and it's she kind of covers that area between absolute desperation and just about surviving. And it's a great film. It's very naturalistic, very real. Realism. It's almost like a documentary style, nearly. And it's at times it's kind of uncomfortable and sad to watch, but it's almost got a positive message at the end. But no, it's a really good film, and well deserved all the accolades it got. That's it.
So I
think we were waiting to see which one of us wanted to talk next. Yeah, go ahead, Claire.
Oh, sorry. So I sat down earlier and I had it up to the big television, and I saw 25 minutes. And sometimes you see a short of 25 minutes, you're like, oh God, because I sat through 25 minutes short and it felt like there were 3 hours. So then I sat down. I didn't read the blurb beforehand. Didn't know it won an Oscar or won an award at Sundance, and didn't know who was involved in it. I actually cried. It was so moving. And I'm not really a massive crier. And just seeing the poverty, the desperation, the loneliness, the woman's struggle as a single mother, like even how dirty the children were, they weren't looked after. And it's so heartbreaking. Like the kids are left outside a pub just up for hours while the mother is inside trying to chat up her ex-boyfriend. And it's just so I was extremely moved by it. It was only afterwards when I looked it up that I realized it won an Oscar, and I realized that actually the cinematographer is a guy called Robbie Ryan. Does anyone know who Robbie Ryan is? Does he sound familiar? So he's a cinematographer. He's Irish. He studied at IADT, and he's cinematographer of The Favourite and Marriage Story, which is quite interesting. And Andrea Arnold, she's a director. Did she write it as well, Carl? Do you know?
I think she did. Like she would have, her background wouldn't have been dissimilar to the background depicted in the film. And she would have grown up in a council estate, and she'd been raised by a single mother. So there was a certain amount of it sort of being autobiographical. Not exactly.
It was filmed in Dartford in Kent, but she actually did a film called Fish Tank. And I've seen Fish Tank, and again, it's gritty realism with Michael Fassbender in it, and a really great young actress. And it was interesting to see actually Danny Dyer. I probably don't know who Danny Dyer is, but he's very well known in England, and he's in EastEnders at the moment. So it's great. It's unusual to see him popping up as a really young actor. But I was extremely moved by it, the gritty realism, and see how such a powerful story kind of must have resonated with so many people to win an Oscar. And it was extremely moving, very well shot, and showed gritty realism is how to describe it.
Does it kind of
very well acted by the actress as well, actually?
Does it kind of show you, though, if you want to win an Oscar, you need to make a film that involves inner city people with not very much money, kind of down on their luck. Because I don't, there was that Irish film a few years ago that it didn't win, but it got nominated for an Oscar, and it was the two little boys that kidnapped the other little boy and murdered him. And it's just, I don't know, I kind of would be nice to have a film win Oscars for, having a positive message, or being, I mean, I guess this kind of a little bit had a positive message at the end, but a friend of mine, she's a Israeli filmmaker. And she was telling me once, like, pretty much the only way she can get funded for films in Israel is if she makes a film about the war with Palestine. Like, if she tries to make a film that's a relationship piece between a couple, that it's practically impossible to get her film made. And I kind of feel a lot of Oscar winning and Sundance and a lot of these films just kind of like, oh, one, it needs to be urban realistic. It needs to have this type of a story to it versus just something that's somewhat not this.
I get the impression though this wasn't made for Oscar bait, because it didn't, for me anyway, it didn't cross that line for Oscar bait. Like it is, but it is very true that the Oscars tend to favor people like dramas and hard life, and kind of people, if you're in a wheelchair and you're crying and you're half disabled, you're disabled or something, you're more likely to win an Oscar than a laugh out loud comedy. It rarely wins an Oscar, especially for short films. But I don't think she made it. But my impression is she didn't make it for Oscar bait. She, as you said, Carl, this is her probably where she grew up. She must have experienced this. I just thought it was extremely true to life, and there's a lot of sincerity in it compared to something that's just pushing out the emotions to win awards.
It did remind me a little bit of when I was living in Dublin, over in Dublin 8 there. Like some of the neighborhood kids around there totally reminded me of a few of this family.
And it's funny because on YouTube, when I watch stuff on YouTube, I love reading the comments, and people sometimes they commented, some people, and I said, I know a woman like that. Like, I know a woman with kids. One commenter said, there's a woman I know who has 5 kids from 5 different fathers. And so it's as you said, like walking around Dublin, it's there every day. You see people like this, and it's so tragic. Like you wonder what happened to the father. She's a single mother, and she's one very young child. And the opening scene, she's confronting another one of her neighbors because the kids got into a fight, and the child has no nappy. And the children look dirty, and she's in her dressing gown, and then her ex-boyfriend comes along in a car, and he pays her a compliment, and she tries to say, oh, those kids are not mine, but you can see the stress. And then when they're in the kitchen and the poverty, and the kids are hungry, and you can feel their hunger, and she's taking out bread and there's mold in the bread, and she gives them sugar, like, to share around with them. It's, those moments just broke me. Like, and the child dropped the soother on the ground, and then she dipped into sugar and gave back to the child. It's just awful. Like, I felt the hunger for the kids. It's so sad.
It was very sad, but you also felt that in her own way that she did love her children. That at the end, she's she runs and she gets very emotional, and even at the beginning, when she's fighting to protect, her children, maybe the honor of her children. So I wouldn't be quick to be over moralistic about it. It depicts kind of the reality, I guess, for her situation, when maybe you can look at the broader society and maybe the supports aren't there. It's easy to judge, from where we sit, but they've got the lived reality of it.
No, it's definitely very realistic. And it's interesting too, because you think about families and how in certain situations like this, your children end up like you. So she's literally fighting another mother at the beginning of the movie because her children were fighting. And it's like, where are the parents learning? And even when they're fighting and the kids are yelling insults and stuff. And it's just like, you're basically raising your child to be just like you.
And that's what came into my head, especially the eldest girl, who was kind of more responsible. But for all the children, like, she was teaching them how to fight, basically. And even like it's just so, you can see where they'd end up. Like, I can visualize their future, and it's not going to be a good one, and people won't feel sympathy for them. Do you know, it's so desperately sad, and it's like she has no help. And even when she's at the bar and she's counting out her pennies, so because she wants to get a drink for the ex-boyfriend, and she doesn't have enough money, and the kids are outside, and she gets them one glass of Coke and one bag of crisps between them. And it's raining as well, and one little girl starts playing in the puddle, you know, and it's awful. But it's fun. It was really good. I love the wasp metaphor, because in one scene there's a wasp on the window, and she opens up the window and lets the wasp out. So what do you think of that?
It was, what was interesting about the wasp is, like, the whole time I was waiting for a kid to get stung by it and get ill. And so that was nice that she kept that suspense going throughout the entire film, because with the mother being kind of neglectful and, you know, leaving the kids all over the place, you're literally thinking at some point, one of these kids is going to get injured and die. And that's what's going to be the dramatic moment in this film. And you're just waiting for that to happen with the wasp and everything like that. So I won't say what happens, you know, to anyone watching this. Yeah. But yeah, that was kind of an interesting metaphor with the wasp, how it's in the house, she lets it out, but then how it shows back up later on in the film when the kids are outside by themselves.
Because I thought one of them was going to get knocked down. Like, I thought I was because they were quite near a road where the pub is, and they're playing by themselves. So I was just, my heart was like, oh God, one of these kids is going to get knocked down. But I just thought it was an amazing film. And it just shows you there's so many films available to watch on YouTube that have won Oscars and have been nominated, but they're not in the general like consciousness, you know. So people don't see them, and everyone should watch this film. It's just stayed with me. Like, I didn't move for 25 minutes and I watched it.
Okay. I actually, somebody had recommended this to me years ago and I'd seen it. And I was reminded of it because I watched recently American Honey. Have you seen American Honey?
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it. She also made that, right?
He made that, yeah. And it's set in the US, actually. And stylistically, it's similar. You know, she uses a lot of amateur actors, and she follows this young woman. And at the beginning of that film, she's in similar circumstances. She has these young children, and she's rooting around this back of a supermarket trying to find food, and so it's real sort of, you know, desperate social kind of deprivation that she's kind of living in. And yeah, it's a really good film as well. I mean, I recommend it. But as I said, like, she has that sort of that style. I don't know who the cinematographer is, actually. Could be the same guy. But and then when I rewatch it, I mean, obviously I knew what didn't happen, so that tension wasn't there for me. But to an extent, it still was. You know, you are like that. You are waiting for something to happen the whole time, and but it is, you know, there is sort of a positive message almost, you know, in it in the end. And I think she probably, because that's her background, she didn't really want to go that hard on it. She wanted to represent it, and she probably felt, to you know, pick up on your point earlier, that that it wasn't deliberately sort of targeted. Okay, this is going to be Oscar bait. She probably said, "Oh, like this is a part of society that isn't really represented in film, you know, and I want to do it." And it's really well made, you know. It's the cinematography, the acting, you know, the kind of the naturalistic style. It's very, very well done.
And she wasn't very judgmental. Like, she just told the story, because she could have went very harsh on the mother, because the mother was neglectful. But it's just told the story, you know. It wasn't like a harsh judgment, skewed view of it. Like, that was interesting.
All right, so ratings?
I gave it 5 stars. I just was really blown away by it.
Yeah, I'll give it a 5 as well, actually.
Oh, you guys are going to hate me then. I'm giving it 3 stars. and I will tell you why. I agree. I think the story's great, the acting's great, the directing, but it loses 2 stars for cinematography. I passionately hate the shaky camera, handheld, make this look like some dramatic documentary, almost like following, and the camera comes in and out of focus at various points as it's following people. And I know that was a stylistic choice for this type of a film, but I do not like that type of cinematography, and so it loses 2 stars for that.
That's okay.
Good to have another point of view. Yeah.
All right. Well, audience, let us know as always if you agree with us or not. We will, of course, throw a link to the film so you can check it out yourself. And yeah, let us know what you think. And with that, we will say our usual. Oh, no, I also need to end this with saying our social medias, although not that anybody ever contacts us on it. So maybe one of these days, one of you listeners or watchers will contact us through our social medias at No Budget Show, or follow. I guess few people follow. That's how you find out what we're watching, what we're reviewing, and what's on next. So with that, we will say, see you next time.
Goodbye.
Bye.